It was fall of 2022. I was out of college working my first full-time job away from home. I was free, or so I thought. And once the glamour of a new start started to fade, reality started to set in. I noticed my life was repeating itself. I was in a new place with new people. So why am I still dealing with the same problems? Okay, shit. What do I do? Oh, more drugs, more parties, more new people. That'll change it. No, that's not it. Okay, so my problems were just too overwhelming and the drugs weren't hitting. What else could I try? Oh, yeah, there's this big trend on people meditating, which is a short story on how I became a meditation teacher. But before I get into that, let me tell you how it took 23 years for me to give up yelling. And so this is where I teach you how to stop yelling at your mom. I came from a long line of people who yelled. My great grandparents yelled at my grandparents yelled at my parents yelled at me, and I yelled back. This unfortunate cycle begins from a lack of communication, a lack of healthy, established space to communicate. And when you grow up being yelled at, it becomes commonplace to also yell. I didn't like yelling. It felt awful and unfulfilling, but I kept doing it. I yelled when I was unhappy and stressed, yelled back when I was yelled at. It was a never-ending cycle of something I didn't want to do. I would get these ruminating cycles of angry thoughts that needed to be expressed somehow, right? So the trend became to pick a person in the house and project all your problems onto them. So how was I ever going to be level-headed when I couldn't even see through the own waves of emotion I had? So I was back with my family for the holidays last year, back to the same old habits, cued by my childhood bedroom time capsule to fall into the character of an angry tween with a chip on her shoulder again. So, when my mother came into the room, yelling at me for dishes in the sink, no matter what validity her argument had, I had ammunition ready to go and screamed it right back at her. She yelled, I yelled back, a relentless and typical flow of events till someone stormed out of the room. I had spent 23 years doing this dance with her, and I could predict it by heart. Except for this one specific fight. In a split second between her and I yelling, there was a moment of stillness, where a zap of clarity came in between the crashes of emotional waves. What if this fight had a different outcome? What if I didn't yell back? What if I didn't have to feel like this? So I took a deep breath, and I did this crazy thing. I lowered my tone, and I apologized. You know what, Mom? I see what you mean. I'm sorry. And like magic, this crazy, loud, vindictive monster in front of me melted. The creases between her brows unfolded, the anger dissipated. The situation transformed. She transformed right in front of me. And something changed in me too. Yelling was a habit instilled in me. To some, this is truly obvious that I should stop yelling, but when yelling is the norm, what else do you really know? Ask yourself, what do you do out of habit that you haven't really been able to stop? So this meditation thing, it's where I and many others practice being in stillness. It's elongating that gap between responses to the external world. I do it to strengthen my ability to stay in stillness. When these waves of emotions come, I do not get caught up in the wave. Find the stillness in all parts of your life. So that means before that wave of anger hits, when you're walking behind a slow person, or your significant other didn't fold the laundry the way you wanted it, or you get cut off in traffic, find the space, make the space. So you have somewhere to dissipate that heat, that emotional wave to. And before I leave you, I want to tell you one last thing I've learned in my Tibetan Buddhist meditation study. There's a concept of rebirth. We have lived countless lives, And so every being has been your mother at some point. We all have compassion for our mothers in one way or another. They carried us in their bellies for 9 months. And so, if every living being has potentially been your mother, why don't we treat every being with compassion, even if they're a slow walker?